This is Drew Spence from the Dynamic Universe. This week we've got a question from Forvist, which is asking, I have Parkside Point Lighthouse that has a huge glass lamp at the top. I need to produce a focus shaft of eye-ray light shining out which travels a long distance. And then he points to the product itself, which is this Point Pleasant for Parkside Point. So the assumption is that he probably means something like this, but you can see the beam shooting out from the lighthouse itself. So that becomes a challenge for this week. So with that said, we pull up the actual product in Daz Studio, and this is what we get. We get a lighthouse prop. There is also an interior set that is also available on Daz, and there's several versions of this product. This isn't the exact one that he pointed to on the Daz forum, but this is one of the variations, and it changed the texture and some of the graphic little details about the actual prop, but the shape is the same. It's just a different texture. And now we're back to this. So we're going to do everything visually. We're not going to really worry about scale too much. We just need to get a nice picture that's going to satisfy the quick. All right, so the lighthouse beam shoots out from one part of it. So we're going to rotate the lighthouse. Instead of worrying about working on the small parts, we're just going to get to the quick and dirty and rotate the whole thing as a visual. We'll slide it back, move it into the ground clearing area. That looks just about right. Sink it a little bit into the ground. See, I'll just sink it into the ground. Shouldn't really have an impact, and the beam will come somewhere from here and shoot outward is what we'll do. And I might get rid of trees instead of worrying about scale. I could always just get rid of the trees. We'll see if they block my shot or cause any kind of visual problem for me. I think it does. I don't like that tree, so I could either get rid of this tree or change the scale of the lighthouse. And since it is the main thing we're playing with today, I'd rather visually have a more impressive lighthouse than worry about the tree. So I'm going to sink it back more into the ground. That's close enough. You can see these trees are planes. Billboards, I'd want to ideally rotate them out, but because it doesn't really matter. Those are decals. You don't really need that. The whole point is going to be this beam. And that's the only thing I really care about for today's exploration. So I have my lighthouse. I'll probably pick a nice angle somewhere far back where I can really see the detail of the lighthouse beam shooting out. Arbitrary, I could change it to left to right, right to left, depending on what we want to do. We might want to pick an angle to make it a little bit more imposing. I could get rid of this cliff base too. We could also get rid of these if I didn't want them there. Or I could even jet this out if I'm not going to really show it. Maybe dramatic. Did he want a dramatic angle of the beam coming out? You know, where are we at in his story? You know, the moon, I could cheat, play with the moon, move the dome, play with actually this is a sun. We could play with that, but we don't really need to. We're probably going to get rid of all of this anyway. So this is just a quick, just setting up the scene. I'm going to save this as a camera in case I forget where I was. Cam render 1. Cam render 1. Apply my active view so it will mimic my perspective that I have set up. And now I've got a camera in case I ever need to come back here again. On the forum, I answered his question by saying Epic God Ray props as one of the choices. That is this product, Epic God Ray props, and it's volumetric lights, which means just like this illustration shows, it's when the dust particles and things in the air is what causes the light to be seen. This is like when you flash a flashlight and you can see the beam and you see all the dust particles dancing in it. That's basically how these lights work. So we're going to use that as our first option to play around with this. All right, we're going to pick long clear lens 1. It looks like if the difference is the shape of it, this one is a bit more square. This one looks a bit more rounded, so we're going to pick the clear lens prop number 1. We pick the prop, then we want to move it somewhere that we're going to need. So I'm going to use the align panel, the align plane, center, center, and center. And when I click that, it aligns one object to another. So it moved the plane, excuse me, the God ray plane moved over to where the roof is, and I have the two objects next to each other. And now we're gonna play with the actual lighthouse beam. We're gonna try to move it. If you look at the prop itself, there's two components. There's one which is the actual prop, which says use me to scale and position. The other one is to change the render settings, or the material settings on it, I should say. So we're gonna use this to move it where we kind of want it in position. Let's see. Let's move this beam, and let's get it to sort of pop from inside that generator or glass, whatever that is that creates it. We'll probably put it in front of that somewhere, just a little bit outside. You don't really need to have it be like perfect, but you get the idea on the system we're using. And we have a beam, and then from there, that looks just about right. Maybe right about there. And then it says scale it, so we kind of want the beam to sort of shoot out, I guess. We kind of want it to shoot out. It's probably going a little crazy, but we'll have some fun today. Why not? I'll move it up a little bit. And that's supposed to be some kind of beam shooting out of there. So that's what we're gonna go with. And maybe this is our shot of the beam coming out, if this is gonna be our shot. So then we're also gonna make a camera, create new camera. We're gonna call this 01 render cam. So we have a camera now that we can use to recall for our shot. And then, okay, so we move the prop where we kind of want it. We sort of have a look that we're sort of going with. And now it says use this to change the settings. So step 1 was choose the prop. Step 2 is apply the base. Now we pick directional long, so we're only going to pick items from the long. So we're going with self-illuminating. And we're going to just sort of experiment. There's a clear A, a clear B, refraction. We'll go with this. We'll stick with A choice. Select me to change the settings. So then I double click the materials, and we'll see the first change in the beam. Then we got apply effect. We're sticking with just long, because don't forget we chose a long beam in front. So we're going to pick a long beam. So these are the effects that it comes with. You'll see little blue, what do we call them? Little light reflections in them, little flares in it. So the question is, do we want flares? And this is special effects. So if you don't want a flare, we could also do that in post if you want total control. So we could just do the straight beam with no effect, or we could put a little bit of, there'll be extra little light flares in the beam. I think for today we'll go with some extra little light flares. Nothing wrong with being a little special effect. I don't know if we're trying to simulate real life here, which we wouldn't want to add extra lights and energy to it, but we're going to do that because we just are going to. And I add that, and you see another little change to the prop. And then finally apply the amount of dust. So underneath the long dust, there's dust levels. And we want to be pretty extreme, so we're going to go with a high dust level of 3. And then the beam becomes transparent, and you can basically tell we've applied our effects correctly. So we've got the beam shooting out. We're going to move this position and scale. We're going to move the beam so that it emanates right from the front of that light emitting panel, and we need to move it over a bit more to get it really lined up. Alright, and still not quite there. So we've got the beam coming out. See what we get. could also put some lights in here and illuminate this tower too. If we really wanted to see all of this. Maybe we'll do that too. Let's do that. Let's put some lights in there too. We're gonna put some lights in there. Light probe kit. Props. Let's put some light probes in there. Just so we understand, I'm just gonna grab this, do the same thing again, move them over there. So you're gonna see these little light probes. I'll show you them real quick. I've covered this in numerous other classes. Those are my little light probes. And I'm gonna pick a pose for them. I'm gonna go with small room. So the probes move to the shape of a small room. I'll put them back in that area. And I've got some little lights. Just cool little things you could do. And we're gonna throw some lights in the room itself so that this area gets a little bit of light. And I'll move them out a little bit so we have some little light coming from this room. Just a little special effect. We gotta pick some material for them. First thing we'll do is it says apply before the presets. That makes them invisible. So they go invisible. And then we'll probably pick a yellowish color. I mean, just yellow doesn't make a difference. Give it a little bit of yellowish and give it a very strong intensity. You could go in and change the intensity settings itself. I go to the surfaces and I go here. We've shown you this before. I could change the settings. We don't need to. We just need this beam to look a little bit stronger. So let's play with this. Save my work. Somewhere we need to save our work. Video work in progress. This is the Lighthouse beam. Sunday session. Beam 01. And let's render this out. For the rendering, I've left the dome on, which is that night sky we picked, and I'm going to turn the ground off so that in case I sink the camera below the ground, we don't get any blockage of the camera. And let's render it and see what we got so far. Alright, we've got a render going, 95%. This is pretty close. We can stop it a little early so what we get picture-wise. Light beam's our fourth attempt. We'll take a look at that. So yeah, we've got the light beam shooting out from the lighthouse against a night sky and backdrop. This is ready for whatever post work we're going to do, but there's the idea of having the God ray as the light beam. We'll take a look at all of them at the end again in comparison. So we have that. We'll save our work. And then we'll get rid of our God ray. We've actually even also saved these as a save as. Let me show you that. What we can also do is save as a scene subset. And what I could do is just save that prop, God ray. I type that in is where I'm going to save it. And then it's going to ask me what do I want to save. And I unclick things I don't want to save. And now what I've got is just the save prop of that God ray. And there's ever a time I'm doing another scene, I can bring in that God ray prop by itself and not have to go through all those settings again. I can just bring it into the scene and make adjustments, and it's a way to also save time in the future. And I save it, and now I've got that item as a prop saved by itself in case I ever want to come back to it and just pull that up by itself. So we're going to get rid of this God ray. We're going to get rid of that entire item, and then we're going to look at another product I suggested, which is the iRay Ghost Kit 3. So this is one that kind of makes the beam itself. If you can see, it would be this part would be the prop. So it's basically like the God ray, but it's a solid prop that shoots out. If you look at it, and it does the ray, and these are the different shapes you can get. Simple volume light is probably what we would grab, but that would be it. So this is another way to sort of get to the same place, and that was the ghost light. So we're gonna go get that. What is it under? Ghost light 3 and the props. So we have choices, and again mileage will vary. We have like a single cylinder volume of light, or do we want a sort of a ray type look? You're not exactly sure which one I'm gonna want to be my favorite, a volume of light, or the beam? Do you want a special effect or a little bit similar? Let's stick to similar. Something that we did that was similar to the other ones. I do the same thing again. I'm going to select my roof first and then select the cylinder. Use the align and align them together. And now I have my cylinder prop in there. And I grab that and we're going to tilt it out so we can see it. And I've got my light. Obviously it's rather small comparatively speaking because it's more so character size, so we'll scale it out so you can see what we've got here. You can see that it gives us a plane. I'll move that over so you can see it and move it up. And we'll zoom in, take a look at what this is. So this is showing us the plane that it starts from, and if you could see, that's the beam that comes out. So you get a plane and then you get the beam that comes out, and the arrow indicates which way the beam is pointing. So we sort of want to enough for today. I mean, we just need to get the beam shooting out the house. We got the idea, right? Similar angle to the other one. And we'll put it back maybe into the window a bit. Not too crazy, but that's what we've got. All right, then we're gonna assign some materials. There's a light blue tint, light green, light red. I think we'll keep it white. I mean, we can play with the put the iRay engine on and we'll take a look at what some of the choices are. Play around with it in real time, see what we like, what we don't like. Play with the intensity. Green, blue, it's gonna be a night sky. Light little pink. This was like the angle we had last time, something like this, which was kind of dramatic. We had this. And we really didn't want the beam to fall off too much. Particle size, shaft length, we want the beam to shoot out. I think we'll keep all of this the way it is for now. And we've got the beam again. So you see we've got that same effect of the beam shooting out. Let's pick some choices. Let's back up so we can make it similar to the other beam effect that we had, the other view that we had, right? We wanted something similar to that. I could also switch to the camera, but we're not gonna do that. We have white tint. Let's see what they look like. Let's play around. Let's go with let's see what he's got for us. Oh, that looks real nice. We got the pinkish one. We got a bluish one. I like the blue. Night sky, blue beam, not bad. Obviously, we could play with these settings, light scale. Ooh, we don't want to go too crazy, so we could tighten it up. I like that. We could tighten it up a bit. Flare upper, flare lower. Particle size will increase the little dots. All right, I think this is good enough for us to get a render going and see what we got and do some comparisons. We do have a beam shooting. The other beam I know will be a bit more special effect driven, but I think we're gonna go with this one for now and just render this out. We could also shrink it to the beam size, but I think we're gonna render this. Let's render this out, see what we get. All right, we've got our render popping into focus and it looks pretty cool. We have a nice little beam shooting out from the lighthouse. I like this. I want to go over, let's see how close this is to being done. This is close enough. We have enough of an image. We'll compare and contrast them later at the end. We'll take a look at whatever we created. That's good enough for now. We're gonna save our work. This will be Lighthouse 3. And because the beam is so circular and round, I just want to show the other option. Sometimes when you show a product, it sort of becomes like that's the only thing that it does. I left the light kit in here. You can see the light kit is still active. This is that Ghost Ray light kit. I forgot I even had it on. Okay, so for this one, there's also this one. This is the one I usually use in all of my books, because I just find like I like the special effectness of it. I like that one slightly better. I like that because I just like the way it spreads out. So we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to find some object and then get them to sort of hang out next to each other. And once they do, I just want to see where this is. Then we want to get the scale going so I can see what this looks like. Same thing. I just want to see it bigger. Rotate it out from the lighthouse. Like I said, I just want to show you the other options in case you say, okay, well, that's the only thing it comes with. It doesn't. A lot of these things are going to be seasoned to taste, so you're going to end up having to play with it and see what you want to get out of it. But this is my favorite kind of beam, is this one. I use this for like car headlamps and everything else. You know, it just looks a little bit more special effect kind of driven. I do the same thing. I'm just going to increase the shaft to go off my screen. Obviously, the wider it is, I would just keep going. But that's close enough for now. Like so you can tell it's a really tight beam. I'm not going to worry about the angle too much either. But I'm going to attempt to get that same kind of shot of the lighthouse beam piercing out. So once we have that set up, we're going to save our work again. Then we're going to get a render going. This is and we're going to get a render going, and then we'll come back and look at this one too. Okay, we're nearing the end of a render. You can see what we've got here is the beam of light. This is one I was saying was a bit more special effect driven. I like this one a lot. Obviously we could put the beam even closer, but we get the idea. This is another version of the same product. We can just go ahead and stop the render. That's close enough. And we'll shove that in the folder and we'll take a look at the end of what we've got. Now that we have all of this cooking, we can actually turn this off. What we're going to do is the same idea again. I'm going to put save as scene subset. And we're going to call this prop. Let's call this one Simple Ghost Ray. And we're going to do the same thing. We're only going to save that simple light by itself. And that's what we'll have as an additional prop to always load up in something else that we're doing. We'll turn it off for now. We'll completely get rid of it. And then we're going to play with Photoshop. So we're going to do a render of the same scene without any beam in it. And we're going to do the beam in post work. So we're going to get another render going without any lights in it. And then we're going to jump into Photoshop and make the beam there. Okay, this is us in Photoshop, going to play around with some of these effects in post. This is one of the first images we did when we first began today. We had a little bit of a light burst. Let's rasterize our layers so we can edit them freely. So this was the first one we did where we just had the light beam with the special effects added. It was very bright, and we got a bit, obviously we could play with this in post, which is what we're going to do now. Then we did another beam where we had the light a little bit far away from the lighthouse itself. Our third attempt, we put the light closer. We added that light kit, so we had a nice beam, but it just wasn't dramatic enough against the bright sky. So we switched to a darker sky, and now you can see the beam shooting out for the lighthouse effect. So this one is usable, and this kind of fits the bill. This is the second attempt where we saw the shafty sort of beam. We had the cylindrical beam, and we went over it again, and we went with the special effect version of it. So this is basically a comparison of all the different ways we've sort of approached this. Now, just for understanding, this is also just the lighthouse itself with no beam. Let's add a beam in post work. The first thing we're going to do is create a new layer called beam. And in this case, we'll switch to the brush tool. We'll stick with white. And in Daz, we have this product, Ron's Light and Shadows. So this is brushes for post work, PSD format. You've seen me use brushes before, so that's not really something new. But this product is basically going to be adding a bunch of light beams. We could play with them themselves, but we're going to stick with the actual rawest usage of this product. The rawest usage. So we're going to grab our beam. We'll throw this on top so we can see it on everything we're going to do. And we're going to pick from the brushes. And we're going to stick to something rather simple. We're not going to go in and try to overdo it with the brush. But we're going to grab a brush. And this is basically the beam of light. That's going to be our lighthouse beam. We're going to resize it a bit. And we'll just throw one on here. And now we have a beam. And then I edit, free transform. And in the quickest, dirtiest sense, that's the way to do the beam in post. And again, you can play with it. There's our beam. You can change the shape of the beam if you want it thinner, lengthen it. But you get the idea. This would be the quickest, dirtiest way to do the beam. Is post, and that's actually using a Ron Defini brush in the Daz Store. What I usually end up doing in all of these cases is combining effects. So I will duplicate this layer so I have another beam to play with in case I end up messing with it too much. I turn one off. Also, that's also a trick, is to double the beam. You get more intensity out of the beam. Everyone kind of knew that already. But we actually added our own, so we can actually combine it and use our copy of our beam mixed in with the real beam that we did in the Daz Store, in the Daz environment, and combine the beams together. And you end up getting something slightly different than just one, so it's still good to use both. And we get a very nice looking beam when I combine these two into a separate image. That looks pretty cool. We'll duplicate our beam again, so we have a third beam to play with. We'll jump down to this one. Remember this one? We had this one. Oops, didn't mean to do it. But we had this picture. That's it with the beam. Now we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to enhance it. But this time, we're going to increase the width of the beam and the shape of it. And we want to get a match going. And watch what we're going to do here. So I'm going to just increase it. See that? I'm increasing the beam and placing it on top. Maybe even here. Maybe there's good enough. I increase it. Make it big. Lay it on top. Now I've got sort of the best of both worlds. I'm going to grab my eraser tool. And I'm going to erase the back end right past there. And I'm already adding to that. Let's duplicate it. That layer of the beam so that it increases in intensity, see? And now we have a slightly different kind of effect happening here. So I like that one. We'll turn those two off. We'll go to this picture of the beam. By now you pretty much know where this is going. We're going to bring our original beam back. Duplicate the beam. And again, this is artsy-fartsy stuff that I like to do. And we're going to mess with the beam. So no matter what we render, we're always going to do a little bit more tinkering than what was originally in it. See, so I'm adding that beam also into this just to give it a little bit something extra. Just a little bit extra on it. Does that make sense, what we're doing with that? So you can see how, even though these are separate renders, we can sort of cheat and play our way into making something. So even no matter pretty much how the render came out, we can go in and play with it and add our own effects to it. Maybe we do something from scratch in case you don't have any of these products and you're sort of saying everything is everything. We're going to make a new layer. We're going to call this our manual beam. This is our manual beam. And what we're going to do is just pick a layer. We're going to grab a shape. We're going to grab a selection tool. We're just going to draw a beam ourselves. And we're just going to draw a beam in ourselves. I'm gonna fill it in with white. I'm gonna filter it. I'm gonna blur, Gaussian blur. Oops, I actually put the beam on the actual lighthouse. Can I cheat my way out of this? Yes, I'm gonna cheat my way out of this mistake that I just made. So I put the beam on the wrong layer, but I'm gonna cheat my way out of it. Instead of hitting undo and going back, we're actually gonna keep this the same. We're gonna stick with our blur. We're gonna blur our beam and leave it and just lighten up that layer. And now we're gonna have the lighthouse and the beam together. And we're gonna keep lightening up till I get the beam effect that I want. So even though I've changed it completely and I made a mistake, we're gonna keep our mistake. And now I'm gonna erase around it and I've got my beam. And I've got the beam, obviously, you know, that shaft was a mistake, but you have the idea that that's what we did. So that's how we can make a beam of our own from scratch. And that's pretty much it. A bunch of beams, a bunch of lights, playing around with it, moving things into position, one beam on top the other, and we get a little bit of a hybridization of our effect. But those are a bunch of different ways to do a lighthouse beam called in from FOST, and we had given some ideas on doing it, and these are the examples that were named. And the Daz forum is a good place to go. There's other people suggesting other techniques, so a lot of the freedom of Daz is just picking how you want to do something, and you just say, how do I want to approach this issue? There's lots of ways to solve all your problems and combine different solutions, and that's it for today. Thank you very much.